In this part, we want to make this logo motion together. This logo motion is almost simple. It is neither too difficult nor too easy. We want to reverse engineer this logo motion. It means we don't want to work mentally. We want to check it frame by frame and see how it's made, and we will proceed based on that and make this logo motion. As I said in the previous sessions, motion graphics is a science that you must first imitate and learn from others, and after you learn all the techniques, you can also use your creativity. This process takes time, and you have to practice a lot to gain skills and know where and what technique to use. But we are in the beginning and we are learning different techniques and we cannot use our creativity. For this reason, we use the reverse engineering method. In the previous sessions, you were somewhat familiar with the reverse engineering method, but this session will focus on reverse engineering, and you will understand how to make the motion graphics from a video. To start, we need the player so we can see it frame by frame. I used VLC Media Player, which doesn't show the frames, but we see the seconds. The rest of the players such as Windows Media Player, KM Player, and etc. are all based on seconds, and you cannot understand, for example, from which frame to which frame this circle was animated. That's why we need the player to see frames instead of seconds. I'm using Keyframe Media Player, which shows video based on frames instead of seconds. You can search for this program on Google and download it. As you can see here, we are dealing with frames instead of seconds. The whole video is 86 frames. If I play the video, the whole video is 86 frames and the frame rate is 30 frames per second. Based on this information, we create a new project in After Effects. First, we specify its size. I choose 1920 and 1080 for Full HD. Set the frame rate to 30 frames per second and click OK. Close VLC Media Player because we have nothing to do with it, and start in Keyframe Media Player and check the video frame by frame. This red circle appears from frame 5, and if I move the CTI, you can see that by frame 20 it has scaled almost to the middle of the screen, from frame 5 to the frame 20. So we draw a red circle. I set the fill to red and the stroke to none. I draw a circle in the middle of the page. Hold Shift. Choose red color. Try to choose the color of the circle as the color of the video. It doesn't matter if you choose a different color. What matters is the technique. Well, we have to place this circle exactly in the middle of the screen. First, I move its anchor point. Now we need to determine the size of the circle. As you can see in the video, its size is small. So therefore, hit S and make the circle smaller. If you remember, the circle appears from frame 5. So I enlarge the timeline a bit to see the frames well. Here, if you look carefully, you can see the frames. From frame 1 to frame 5, we can't see the circle. So I create a keyframe for scale, and I make it 0. I move the CTI to frame 5 and set the circle size to 48. Now the circle is scaled. I don't want it to be scaled like this. So I move the first frame and place it exactly behind this keyframe. You could also move the entire layer with open bracket to start at frame 5. This circle should be enlarged to frame 20. So I move the CTI to frame 20 and scale it like this. If you check the video, you can see that the circle is enlarged like this. Now I select all these keyframes and press F9 to make them easy. So far we have created our animation. We will check the video again. You can see that this white circle starts at frame 7 and continues until frame 27, covering the entire screen. This white circle is smaller than the red circle. So I draw a white circle in the middle of the circle. Hold Shift and draw a circle. Choose white. I also hit center anchor point and center in view. It starts from frame 7. So one frame before that, I create a keyframe for scale and set it to 0. Press Ctrl right to move CTI one frame forward and set the scale value to 100. By doing this white circle appears from frame 7. Try to name your layers from now, because the number of layers is going to increase, and if you don't name your layers, you will get confused. Move CTI, and by frame 27, this white circle should cover the entire screen. Of course, we have seconds after 30 frames, because every 30 frame is equal to 1 second. Look here, after 30 frames, you will see the number of frames. 1 second and 3 frames equals 33 frames. Set CTI to 27 frames and enlarge it with scale. In this way, I cover the whole screen. Select keyframes and make them easy ease with F9. So far we have made this animation. Now we come to the rest of the components. This triangle appears from frame 7 and gradually becomes a circle. This technique is called morph in motion graphics. Of course, I haven't taught this technique yet, but you will get to know it in this session. In this frame, the triangle rotates. From frame 7 to 22, this triangle turns into a circle, and then the circle is scaled. For now, we move forward step by step. Draw a triangle. We use the polygon tool. Without releasing the mouse, you can determine the number of sides with the up and down keys on the keyboard. Choose red color for the triangle. I put it in the middle of the circle and scale it down. Choose center anchor point and center in view. In frame 7, I create a keyframe for scale. Hit Ctrl right and set the scale to 0. This triangle scaled to frame 16. So we scale it in this way. We don't do anything with its morph for now. The main thing is that this triangle gets bigger. Its scale is almost good. Select the keyframes and press F9 to make them easy ease. The morph operation continues almost from the first frame until here. I mean frame 22 to become a complete circle. Now we have to convert this triangle into a circle. How does this happen? First, I change the name of this layer to red triangle. Open the contents, polystar. In the polystar path section, we have to animate the outer roundness option. In frame 7, I create a keyframe for this option, and if I'm not mistaken, by frame 22, this triangle should turn into a circle. Increase this value until the triangle turns into a circle. Select this keyframe and press F9 to make it easy ease. We will animate this triangle until the end. From frame 22 to frame 28, this circle becomes smaller. Hit S. Until frame 22, the size of the circle is fixed. It becomes smaller from 22 to 28. Of course, its anchor point must be exactly in the middle of the circle. Then, in frame 28, I make the circle smaller. Because we moved the anchor point, the triangle is also moved. We can move it manually. Hold Shift and move it up a little. Well, so far the animation is good. From frame 28, the circle turns into a triangle again. and becomes a little bigger. It rotates a little. It turns into an egg up to frame 40 and gets a little bigger and rotates a little. Move the CTI and select frame 40. In this section, you can see the frames. In this frame, we have to turn this into an egg. I animate the outer roundness from the content section. It was a circle until frame 27, so I create a keyframe at the frame 27. Move the CTI and it should turn into an egg at frame 40. Change the numbers and compare with the video to get the desired shape. In the same way, you can reverse engineer and see how the motions were made, and with practice, you too can make like it and become a master. The circle also rotates a little. So in this frame, I hit Alt-Shift-R to create the rotation keyframe. Here I rotate the circle, and then make it 0 at frame 40. I will animate this until the end. By frame 48, the circle becomes smaller a bit. Hit S. Up to frame 40, the size of the circle is fixed, so I create a keyframe. In frame 48, I reduce the size of the triangle a little. Of course, here our circle gets a little bigger, and then it gets smaller. So in frame 40, I enlarge the triangle like this. Up to frame 57, the circle gets a little bigger. You can see frame 57 here, and I scale it a little. We want to animate a bounce manually. Of course, in future sessions, you will learn how to create a bounce using expressions. It becomes smaller again until frame 67. Hit Ctrl-Shift right and make it a little smaller. It gets a little bigger at frame 77. And it gets smaller again at frame 87. I go forward 10 frames and scale it a little. And again I move forward another 10 frames and make it smaller. And in this way I create a bounce mode. So far I hit N and play the animation from the beginning. Of course, something is not right here, and I don't like the triangle animation. There should be no rotation here, and it should be straight. Hit R and set this value to 0. I set this value to 0 until frame 20, because it shouldn't rotate. Now we have better animation. I will also make this number 0. The animation is almost good, and we work exactly like the video. The more you work on your motion, the better the animation will be. And due to time constraints, I'll leave it to you. In frame 11, two yellow circles appear and are placed under the white layer and cover the entire screen until frame 22. Move the CTI to frame 11. Of course here the triangle is slightly rotated. I will make it 0. In frame 11, I draw two circles in yellow. Try to draw the size of the circles as shown in the video, so that they are the same size when they scale. I also changed the name of the layer to right yellow circle. I changed its color to yellow. And with S, I make it small. Of course, because its anchor point is in the middle of the page, it doesn't scale properly. Right-click on it and select the Center Anchor Point option from the Transform section. Then make it smaller. I will move it a little. Its place is suitable. I get a duplicate of this layer. I will also change its name to the left yellow circle. Hit P and move it from the X-axis and place it here. These two circles appear in frame 10. So select these two layers and press S from the keyboard. I create a keyframe. Move one frame forward and create another keyframe. Set the scale of the first frame to 0. This is how it appears from frame 11. Select both layers and with Ctrl-Shift-Right move 10 frames forward. Scale to cover the entire page. Select all the keyframes and make it Easy Ease with F9. Of course, these two layers should be placed under the white layer. Like this, drag and drop under the white layer. Now if we play the animation, we created exactly like the video. You can change the color of the circles as you wish. Here in frame 15, a black circle appears below the triangle. And scale to frame 33, covering the entire screen. I select all these layers and press U to hide the frames. Now I have to draw a black circle. Holding Shift will draw a full circle. Choose black color for this circle. Hit S and create a keyframe for scale. Go back one frame with Ctrl left and set the scale value to 0. I will also change the name of this layer to black circle. And I put it under the triangle layer. In frame 16, the black circle appears. I scale it a little. Up to frame 33, covers the entire screen. I will make this a little smaller. In frame 33, scale it. Select all keyframes and press F9 to make it Easy Ease. So far we have created this logo motion and determined their timing. Here, in the middle of the triangle, shapes like circles and triangles appear. They rotate here. At this point, the shapes will become smaller and their opacity will decrease. So with the Keyframes Media Player program, you can analyze the created motion graphics, and we can imitate and do the same to get familiar with the techniques. In frame 19, I draw a circle and a triangle. Press F2 to deselect all layers. In frame 19, I select the polygon tool and draw a triangle. Hold Shift. Set the fill color to none and stroke to solid, because it only has strokes. Choose white for stroke color and adjust the stroke size. For example, 3. This triangle should be placed exactly in the middle of the page, and its anchor point should be placed in the middle of the triangle itself. It appears from frame 19. Hit S and create a keyframe. Hit Ctrl left and make it 0. Now we have to see how big it will be. It scales until frame 22. From frame 22 to 28, its size is fixed. And from frame 28 to 40, it becomes smaller again. Well, I will move the CTI in frame 22 and increase the size of the triangle. We go step by step. First, I create a scale keyframes, then position and rotation keyframes. Up to frame 28, the size of the triangle is fixed, so I create a keyframe. Move the CTI to frame 40 and make it small. Select these keyframes and hit F9. Be sure to save this project somewhere on your hard disk, because we have worked hard on it so far. For example, type Logomotion 3 and save. Here, if you pay attention, its opacity decreases from frame 30 and finally becomes 0. Move the CTI to frame 30 and create an opacity keyframe with Alt-Shift-T. I go to frame 40 and set the opacity to 0. Now, if you pay attention here, the opacity will gradually decreases and finally it will be hidden. We need to change the position of this layer. As you can see, it also rotates around. From the first frame, hit Alt-Shift-R until the rotation keyframe is added. Go to frame 40 and rotate it. Select these keyframes and press F9. Now we have to change the position. Press Alt-Shift-P to create the position keyframe. We must determine the direction of the triangle, which is optional. For example, I will put it here. I select these two keyframes and press F9. We created exactly like the video. We should take several duplicates of this layer and place them in different directions. We have to take 3 duplicates from this layer, and they move in different directions. All of them also start from the middle. Change the name of this layer to Triangle 1. Then I duplicate it with Ctrl D. Hit U to see the frames. I come to frame 40 and change the direction of the triangle. I duplicate this layer again and do the same thing. U, and then change the path. This is a matter of taste. You can put it anywhere you like. Ctrl D, U, and change the direction. Now it's time for the circle. The technique is the same. We make one of the circles and duplicate it for the others. This circle is small from the beginning and gradually gets bigger. Press F2 to deselect all the layers and draw a circle in the middle with the ellipse tool. Hit S. Set the anchor point of this circle. And put the circle in the middle of the page. From 19, I create a keyframe. Go 1 frame backward and make this 0. This circle scales up to frame 31 and then it becomes small. I scale it in frame 31. I also reduce the stroke. It also becomes smaller in frame 40. Select keyframes and hit F9. From frame 31 to 40, its opacity decreases. The circle doesn't rotate. In this frame, hit Alt-Shift-T to add opacity. At frame 40, I set it to 0 so it disappears. Select these two keyframes and press F9. Now we have to animate the position. I come to the first frame and hit Alt-Shift-P. Go to frame 40 and move the circle. Try to animate them randomly to make it more attractive. Select these two keyframes and press F9. I will also change the name of this layer, for example Circle 1, and make a duplicate of this layer. Ctrl D. Hit U and at frame 40 change the location of the circle. Ctrl D, U, change the direction. Again, Ctrl D, U, change the direction. So far we have created our logo motion. It's time to animate the lines around the logo, which you learned in the previous session. But before that, it's better to animate our logo. From frame 27, this logo appears and it rotates a little. Then it becomes straight and scale up until frame 41. And then it connects to this triangle and takes on bounce mode. I do exactly the same thing. I import a logo into After Effects in frame 27. I select this logo and place it above this layer. Press S and make this logo smaller. Create a keyframe and set its value to 0 because it appears small and becomes large at frame 45. In this way, I make it large. I select two keyframes and press F9. It was rotating a bit. Hit Alt-Shift-R to add rotation keyframes. I also create a keyframe in the last frame. Finally, I rotate the first frame a little. I choose an angle of 90 degrees. I also make these two keyframes easy ease. Now if you look carefully, it stops moving when it reaches this frame. To make it move with this triangle, we use the link option that you learned in previous sessions. Hit U until the keyframes are hidden. We must connect this logo to the triangle. Select all layers with Ctrl A and press U twice to hide the keyframes. Press F2 to deselect all layers. We need to connect the logo to the red triangle. I use the parent option and connect it to this layer. In this way, as the triangle moves, the logo also moves. I also want to make the color of the logo white. But before that, it is better to convert the logo to a pre-composition so that you can replace it with any other logo. With this, if we want to change the logo, we no longer have to animate these keyframes from the beginning. Even if we have applied effects on this layer, we can easily change the logo. Select the first option. Type a name, logo for example, and click OK. If I go into logo pre-composition, we only have the logo and all the animations are out. On this pre-composition, if I press U, you can see that all keyframes are placed outside. I want to change the color of the logo to white. I use the fill effect and place it exactly on the pre-composition layer. And I choose white color from this part. If I put this effect on pre-composition, if the logo is also colored, it will become white. There is one more effect left that we want to create in this section. I mean this effect. We learned how to create it in the previous sessions. 10 copies are created from one line. It starts from frame 24 and ends up to frame 31. I start animating the line from where the logo appears. In order to be able to draw the lines exactly in the middle, I select the Title Action Save option from this section. Press F2 so that no layers is selected. Select the Pen tool. I stroke the line and draw a straight line by holding Shift. I put its stroke on 3. I give this line a repeater effect so that 10 copies of this line are copied. Open the repeater section. Set the number 3 to 10. This will create 10 copies. Open the transform repeater and set the position to 0. You learned this technique in the previous session. With rotation, we rotate the lines around their axis. We increase the distance between the lines with the anchor point. Now we place its anchor point exactly in the middle of the shape with the center anchor point. With center in view, I place it in the middle of the screen. This shape appears in frame 29. Hit S to create the scale keyframe. One frame before, set the scale value to 0. I will also make this a little smaller. This animation continues until frame 31. I will enlarge it a little. And I make all keyframes easy ease. Here, if you look carefully, it shrinks in the middle and finally disappears. The trim pad effect is used. Once you learn and practice the techniques, you can create any motion you want. I also reduce the stroke size a little and set it to 2. I add the trim pad effect from this part. Open the trim pad. We have to animate the start. Keyframe the start. Move the CTI and set the number to 100 here. We created exactly the same effect in the video. I make these two keyframes easy ease with F9. Finally, it's time to animate the text, which starts from frame 25 and continues until frame 40. I type a text with the text tool. For example, Motion Graphics Agency. I choose white color and make it smaller. Select the center anchor point and change its position. You can also specify its font in the character section. For example, I choose Tahoma font. Align the position of this text with the circle. Press Ctrl R and draw a ruler. Place the anchor point of the text on this ruler and adjust the position of it. I will also reduce its size a little with S. Create a keyframe and set its value to 0. I enlarge this text in frame 41. Select both keyframes and make it easy ease with F9. I repeat the same steps for the text below. Press F2 to deselect all layers. Type the desired text with the text tool. For example, we type the address of our site. I choose red color for this text. I will also reduce its size. Put the anchor point in the middle and adjust the position of the text. I place the anchor point exactly on the ruler. This text also starts from frame 38 and continues until frame 58, 20 frames. In frame 38, I create a keyframe for scale and set it to 0. Press Ctrl Shift Right twice and set the scale to 100. Make the keyframes easy ease with F9. I also add opacity. Press Alt Shift T and add opacity. Opacity should be 0 in the first frame and 100 after a few frames. Make these two keyframes easy ease. Now our whole animation is finished. And it took 4 seconds. Hit N. Now if I play the animation, we were able to make such a logo motion from scratch using reverse engineering method. The interesting thing about pre-composition is that we can easily change the logo. Suppose we want to sell this logo motion as a template in marketplace like VideoHive. VideoHive.net is a very famous site where you as a logo motion and motion graphic designer can sell the templates you design. To change the logo, double-click on this pre-composition and replace it with a text. Type Motion Graphic Agency. I set its font to luckiest guy. The color is not very important because we choose any color here. In the main composition, white color is chosen because we use the fill color effect. I leave this text here. I also hide the bottom layer and return to the main composition. As you can see, instead of the logo, we can put any text or logo and render it and use it as our logo motion. If you feel that this logo is small, go into the pre-composition and we'll make it bigger with S. If I go back to the main composition, you can see that the text is showing in half. With this second option, you can see the complete text. I will make the text smaller. So using pre-compositions, you can replace your logo with any other logo and sell this logo motion as a template to anyone. To change the text, you can double click here and enter any text and its animation will be the same. So you can sell this logo motion as a template in marketplace like VideoHive and earn money. I'm making this logo a little smaller and bring it down with P. As you can see, we were able to make such an animation. Thanks for watching.